Hey everyone, we're Red Donkey Projections. My name is Eric, and we have Lucas as always.
Hey everyone.
Today is September 25th, 2020, and today we will be filling out our bi-weekly kind of Senate prediction. We will be going through some states, and we'll be talking about the contested states. Before we move on, as you know, and as you can see, Yapmis, the software that we use, has added our logo onto their website. So we thank them very much. We give them a huge shout out for showing our logo on there, and so we can get some more support.
Yes, thank you, YAPMS, so much. And with that being said, let's get right into it. So let's first mark the safe Democratic states, Oregon. We don't have to discuss most of these. Ben Lujan here, I think it will go into safe. New Hampshire, Republicans failed to field a good candidate there. Gene Shaheen probably will win that one. Ed Markey, we now know, will be the nominee and probably beat, what's his last name? Connor, I don't remember the last name. But anyways, no chance there for him. Ed Markey will definitely win that seat. Okay, so is that it for Dick Durbin, the minority whip. And I do
And
think that Tina Smith, I do think can edge out over 15-point victory. It'll be slightly above 15%, but I think she will edge out a 15-point victory here.
And now we got Mark Warner in Virginia.
Yeah, I almost forgot that one. Probably one of the more moderate members of the Senate. GOP has not done well in Virginia. Failed to field a good candidate as well. All right, heading now into the safe Republican states. We don't need to discuss a lot of these, although some we do. Let's see. Is that?
I think that's it.
That is it. Wow, okay. A lot less than usual. All right, let's head to the likely states we won't be discussing that much either. Mississippi, Clyde Smith versus wow, am I really? Yes, thank you. I'm forgetting a lot of names today, but they ran against each other in a special election. I believe it was, I don't want to say day. It was was it 2017? I don't remember. Wow. But anyways, they did run before. SB came kind of close, but ultimately lost. Mississippi's deep red. I don't see any chance of this going to the Democrat here. Alabama, Doug Jones is the incumbent. He's a Democrat. He got very lucky in 2017 when he ran against Roy Moore. Roy Moore was a terrible candidate.
Yes,
many accusations against him. Yes, a lot
of sexual allegations, and that was a time where the Me Too movement was really present. So yeah, and the thing is, Jones didn't even win by a lot, which shows you how conservative Alabama still is, despite this situation.
And it wasn't even just those allegations; it was a bunch of stuff on him. He got accused of being racist at points, and as well as I believe Islamophobia. But a lot of stuff went against him, and he narrowly lost, which is really surprising considering how terrible of a candidate he was. All right, is that it for the likelies? And I think that might actually be.
I think.
Alaska,
Kentucky,
right?
And Kentucky.
Oh, and Kentucky, yeah. Thanks for reminding me. Eric, why don't you can do Kentucky? I'll do Alaska.
Sure. So Kentucky, we have Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and Amy McGrath. The Democrat, she's a moderate Democrat, which is better in a state like Kentucky. Despite this, McConnell is an incumbent and has been in the Senate for quite a while. He's also the majority leader. And because of that, he has a pretty good shot. It's not safe because Amy McGrath, brain fart. Amy McGrath is still doing kind of good against him in the polls, but McConnell still has a pretty good lead.
And also McGrath has been fundraising a lot of money too. So I also do think that this will be less than 15%. And you got to remember that Mitch McConnell's incredibly unpopular. I believe he is he is the second most unpopular senator, which is definitely part of why we are putting this one as likely. All right. And Alaska now is, I believe it's Sullivan. Yeah, Sullivan versus Gross. Gross is an independent, but it's pretty much been assumed that he will be caucusing with the Democrats if he were to win, which is not likely at the moment. But the polling does look interesting, which is why we have to put this one as likely. We don't solely rely on the polls. If it showed like Sullivan up by 10, sure, we keep it as safe, but the early polling we had was showing a tighter race than definitely we expected. So we're putting that as likely. All right, so now heading to the likely states now. Michigan, first of all, definitely is likely. I know there's people out there saying that John James is going to flip the state. Trafalgar says John James +1, so I trust them. No, Trafalgar's a terrible pollster. And there have been several polls coming out showing Peters up by a decent margin. So we're putting this one as likely.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And our next likely state is Colorado. John Hickenlooper versus Cory Gardner. Hickenlooper is doing very well in the polls. As we know, he ran for president, and he got quite the recognition during that campaign. And Gardner is a staunch Trump supporter, which is not the best in the state of Colorado right now.
Absolutely. I don't want to get too much into it because we discussed this in multiple videos before, but to put it simply, Gardner is a terrible candidate in the state of Colorado, while Hickenlooper is a terrific one. I think this was probably one of the best, what's the word? It's one of the best fields from the Democrats this election cycle. So, win back the Colorado seat for the Democrats. All right. And I think that may be it for the likelies, except for Georgia Special. Georgia Special, we were debating about this, whether to move to lean or to keep it as likely. We're probably going to keep it as likely. We did see a recent poll showing Warnock up by 4 points, but we got to remember that the undecided number there is quite high, and the undecided numbers do tend to split for the Republicans. And in this case, Georgia actually has a jungle election, which means no primaries. Everyone just gets tossed into the election. If no one gets above 50%, the top two vote receivers, they go into a runoff, which I believe happens in January. If a candidate does get over 50%, they win the election. Looking at it right now, it might go to a runoff, likely between Doug Jones and Kelly Loeffler, who are both Republicans. Warnock is behind a bit, and I don't think he will even advance to the runoff, which is why I do think that this one will probably go into likely to the Republicans.
Yes, and Lucas meant Doug Collins and not Doug Jones.
Oh, sorry, Doug Collins. Anyway, next state is now the lean. Oh, one more. MJ Hagar versus Cornyn. We saw an interesting poll recently that came out today, +2, but it was a B- pollster, so I don't want to trust that too much. But that was interesting to say the least, but we'll keep it as likely. Eric, you want to talk about it a little bit?
So John Cornyn is doing pretty well here. I think he's an incumbent, and we don't have a Beto O'Rourke Democrat who is campaigning very, very hard and going to every county. Don't blame the Democrat. You can't really do that in this in the world we're living in right now. But Cornyn has a pretty good shot at winning this, and that incumbency advantage is just going to help him win. And also, people just don't know who MJ Hagar is unless they've seen her in an interview or something. So that's
Hagar doesn't really have as much political experience as Beto O'Rourke did. Beto O'Rourke was a representative. He got tons of money. MJ Hagar does not match up to a Beto O'Rourke candidate. Now we can head into the leans. The first one we have here is Kansas, which is kind of surprising. It is surprising.
We got some polls for the first time in a while against Barbara Boyer and Roger Marshall, who was the person who won the Republican primary here. And look at this. I understand, yes, it is a B- pollster, and the undecided number is quite high. But this means that objectively, Roger Marshall can't be up by much. And look at this. Yes, it was from August, but Survey USA only put Marshall up by 2, which was very interesting to think about. So, yes, we've been saying that, if Klobuchar were to win the primary with all of his allegations and scandals, then it would have been very close. But we're seeing that it's close even without him being nominated. So it's very interesting to see what's going to happen.
Right, and keep in mind, this is borderlinely unlikely. We were considering putting this one as likely still, but at the end of the day, we do think the victory will be slightly below 5%, maybe 4.5, 4.6%, but we're seeing a lean. definitely in this one. And the other one, which is kind of similar to this, and I also got to mention, Barbara Boyer is a fundraising powerhouse. She has, she's raised a lot of money, similar to Amy McGrath. And our next person here, Jamie Harrison. This one's also kind of surprising. Thinking about how deep red South Carolina, is, to see this go into a lean margin is quite interesting. Lindsey Graham, I mean, people really don't, how do I say this? He said, this exact quote, he was very specific about it. He basically said something along the lines of, if there's a Republican that is president in 2020, they shouldn't appoint a justice, use my words against me. Yes. I mean, that was highly specific.
Yes, that put him in a very, very interesting situation, which definitely did not help his cause. And a lot of Republicans who said, in 2016, no, we are not going to let Barack Obama appoint a justice because it's an election year. Now they're backing out of those claims to support the president. So some of them are losing quite the popularity. And Lindsey Graham is definitely one of those. As Lucas said, he literally said, mark my words, I will not be in support of a president choosing a justice before an election. Not even before an election, 2 months before an election. So very controversial. And that's probably why we're seeing such a huge dip in the polls.
I mean, yeah, it's absolutely possible. Jamie Harrison, again, in the polls, I know we keep mentioning the polls, but the polls actually look quite decent for Jamie Harrison, to say the least. It's Graham +1, even, Graham +3. Like, these are single-digit leads. And yeah, Quinnipiac is not the best pollster, but it's really interesting to see this. We head back to February, and, Graham's up 50. Graham's up 17 points. Marist College A+.
Yeah, so regarding Lindsey Graham, people have informally named Lindsey Graham in different phases. So Lindsey Graham 1.0 is when he was a staunch Trump supporter, and then Lindsey Graham 2.0 was when he really disagreed with Trump on a lot of things. And now
I think, yeah, I agree, but I think you mean the other way around.
Yes, my bad. Yeah. Lindsey Graham 1.0, he really didn't like Trump. Lindsey Graham 2.0, he stood with Trump. And then maybe Lindsey Graham 3.0, kind of going back on his claim about the justice. So it's a very interesting race here.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, it probably will be less than 5 points, which is our lean characterization. All right, now let's head to our – oh, no. Wow, I missed a few. Quite a few, actually. North Carolina and Arizona. North Carolina, both these two states, Cunningham and Kelly, respectively, are performing extremely well in the polls. Will it be higher than a 5-point margin in Arizona? Potentially.
Very possibly.
We have it as a borderline still. We do want some more data to come out, as well as, analyzing more of the demographics in depth. But in general, it does look quite good for Kelly. This was interesting to see that it was only up 1 point. But generally, very good for these two candidates. Cunningham +5, C-, don't want to trust that too much. Emerson +6, Cunningham +5. So North Carolina going blue is looking pretty likely. Same with Arizona. We'll keep them as lean for now. Just for some background, Arizona, Martha McSally is a terrible candidate, as well as Tom Tillis. Yeah, they're really not that approved of. So we're putting these two as lean D. All right. And one more lean D is actually the state of Maine. Sarah Gideon is actually doing quite well. Susan Collins is the most unpopular senator in the United States right now. And we do want to address that she has announced she would not vote for Trump's nominated candidate for the Supreme Court, which we saw a few hours ago. He is intending to appoint Coney Barrett. But the reason why, I don't think that will have too much of an impact a lot of people are going to view that as, too little, too late. She voted for Kavanaugh. She voted against impeachment. Maine likes their senators to be very, bipartisan, very moderate, very centrist. Yeah, you see that with Angus King, Olympia Snowe, Cohen, and they have just not seen that with Susan Collins during the Trump years, which is why we are going to put this one as lean D. Polling supports that as well. And now we're going to be heading into another lean Republican state, which is Ossoff versus, oh wow, my memory today is not doing well. Ossoff versus Purdue. There we go. Eric, you want to kind of discuss this?
Yeah, so in Georgia's regular Senate prediction, we have been seeing some indicators that Purdue, Ossoff, who is the Democratic candidate, is kind of catching up to Purdue. And we've seen some polls such as, Ossoff +1, but then kind of Purdue bounced back, and he's up by 8 and 5 and 6. So honestly, and also based on the demographics of Georgia, they're fairly conservative. I think it's safe to put this one as lean.
Yeah, sorry about that. But I also agree with you. I think that this one is also a borderline one. Georgia, Kansas, South Carolina are definitely borderline ones. They could be as well with Arizona as well. So for those reasons, we are going to be putting these states as lean. We're going to now head into our tilt states. Eric, do you want to discuss Montana or Iowa?
I can discuss Montana, the double Steves. So,
all right.
Yep, Montana is a very, very close race, or at least it used to be a very close race. It's going to be one of the states that are going to decide this Senate race overall. We have Steve Bullock, ran for president. He's a Democrat. He ran for president, gained a lot of recognition and popularity. He was a very popular governor. Steve Daines, pretty known Republican in Montana. And there were a lot of ads that the Republican Senate sent out to everyone to kind of get everyone's support for Steve Daines in Montana. And those ads probably worked because Steve Daines has been up in the past few polls. He's leading by a very slim margin, but it's still a pretty significant lead, which is why I think I can put this as tilt red. It's still going to be a very close race, but at the moment, Steve Daines does have the leg up.
Absolutely agree with you on that. Heading now to our final state, Iowa. Honestly, it is a pure toss-up, but if I had to put it in one new category, it's going to be tilt D. And this is because of the new, more and more data we're getting out of the state of Iowa here. We don't solely rely on the polls, but when we see a consistent pattern like this, it's kind of interesting that we got to keep note of it. With Greenfield up 1, up 3, up 2, even 3, potentially an outlier there. But we are seeing Greenfield up by in nearly every single recent poll since August. And there was a period of time, yes, August 5th, we did see Ernst up, 113. But throughout this election season, looks like Greenfield has been leading pretty well. And Greenfield is a decent candidate. So we do think that Iowa will go blue in the Senate. Tilt D. And that means that Democrats have an outright majority. They will not need Vice President Kamala Harris to break the tie. We do think that Kamala Harris will become, the vice president because we do project Joe Biden will win. And I think a 51 majority will be very helpful for the Democrats because there are several Democrats there that, they can't, they can't reliably trust them to vote with the Democrats all the time. One example, Joe Manchin in West Virginia, potentially Angus King, who is an independent with caucuses with the Democrats in Maine. But in general, things are looking pretty good for the Democrats right now. With that, yeah, I don't think much has changed. The only flips that we've had were, Iowa. I think we moved a couple states further blue, if I'm remembering that correctly. Yeah, South Carolina, Kansas. But yep, that is the end of it for today. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like this episode, please hit the like button if you like our content. Please hit subscribe. We'll see you in our next video whenever we upload.
See ya.